It starts quietly. A feeling, not a thought. The color drains from your day, replaced by a persistent, monotonous gray. The World Health Organization calls it an occupational phenomenon, a syndrome of chronic, unmanaged workplace stress. They give it a clinical name, burnout, but for millions it's just life. It's the feeling of energy depletion, a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep can't fix. It's the growing mental distance from your job, a cynicism that corrodes passion into process. It's the sense of reduced professional efficacy, the quiet terror that you're just not good enough anymore. For Anya, a coder, it was the 11 p.m. Slack notifications that felt like tiny electric shocks, each one a reminder that her mind was never truly her own. For Ben, a strategist, it was the back-to-back Zoom calls, a digital purgatory where his voice became just another square in a grid of silent nods. For Chloe, a designer, it was the endless cycle of revisions, the slow pixel-by-pixel erosion of her creativity under the weight of committee-led feedback. They were 25 years old, and according to recent studies, they were hitting their peak burnout nearly 2 decades earlier than previous generations. They were living a profound workplace mismatch, where the job they did felt fundamentally misaligned with the values they held. They were told this was the price of success, the hustle, the grind, but what if the price was too high? What if the game was rigged? So they did something radical. They quit, not for another job, but for an idea. An idea that work didn't have to break you to build you, but could they build a company on a foundation of rest? Could a 4-day work week succeed? To find out how they rewrote the rules, make sure you subscribe to Gen Shift and turn on notifications. 1. The great escape from burnout to a bold idea. The decision wasn't made in a single dramatic moment. It was a slow burn, a shared recognition that their exhaustion wasn't a personal failure, but a systemic one. In late-night conversations, fueled by lukewarm takeout and mutual frustration, Anya, Ben, and Chloe deconstructed their burnout. They weren't just complaining, they were diagnosing. They identified the 6 patterns that organizational psychologists have flagged for decades as the primary drivers of burnout. First, the unmanageable workload that bled into weekends, turning their time into a waiting room for the next work crisis. Second, a perceived lack of control, the feeling of being micromanaged on tasks but given no real autonomy over their work lives. Third, insufficient reward and recognition, where their extra hours and efforts vanished into a corporate void, unacknowledged and unappreciated. Fourth, a poor workplace community, the transactional nature of the team where support was scarce and conflict was common. Fifth, a profound lack of fairness, a sense that the system rewarded visibility over value and that their efforts were just feeding a machine that didn't care about them. And finally, the deepest cut of all, a fundamental values mismatch, the growing realization that the work they were doing simply didn't matter to them in a way that justified the sacrifice. They were the children of hustle culture, a phenomenon that promised meritocratic rewards but often delivered little more than exhaustion. They had watched the generation before them, the millennials, chase the dream of entrepreneurship and side hustles, only to end up underpaid, priced out of housing, and deeply burned out. The social contract their parents knew, loyalty for stability, had been ripped up, and the new one seemed to be a scam. Gen Z's rejection of this model isn't about working less. It's a refusal to participate in a system that demands relentless effort for diminishing returns. It's a search for meaning, for work that aligns with their values, for a life that isn't entirely consumed by a job. They saw that the relentless pursuit of a career ladder often led to a beautifully furnished cage. Their idea wasn't born from a market analysis or a pitch deck. It was born as an antidote. They asked a simple question. What if we built the company we wish we worked for? A company where mental well-being wasn't a line item in an HR budget, but the foundational operating principle. A place where rest was considered a prerequisite for creativity, not a reward for it. And at the core of this vision was a single non-negotiable rule. They would only work 4 days a week. They would build a tech consultancy, but its real product wouldn't be code or strategy decks. It would be a new blueprint for work itself. They called it Aura. It was more than a name. It was a promise of a different kind of professional environment, one that didn't drain your light but amplified it. The Great Escape wasn't just about leaving a toxic job. It was about running toward a more humane future they had to build themselves. 2. Building the new world, from manifesto to business plan. An idea is not a business. To turn their vision into a viable company, the founders of Aura knew they needed more than just good intentions. Their first act wasn't to write a business plan, but a cultural one. They drafted the Aura Manifesto, a document that would serve as their constitution.
Ooh.
It was built on 4 pillars that researchers have identified as the core of every great workplace. Credibility, a commitment to honest and ethical leadership where management's actions always match their words. Respect, treating every team member as a whole person with a life outside of work, not just a resource. Fairness, ensuring equitable opportunities, recognition and compensation, and pride, fostering a collective belief in the work they do and the way they do it. This manifesto wasn't just a poster for the wall, it was a set of decision-making criteria for every aspect of the business, from hiring to project management, creating a culture of deep trust and psychological safety.
Whoa.
With their values codified, they tackled the central challenge: how to make a 4-day work week productive. They knew the biggest failure point of this model is simply trying to compress 5 days of work into 4, which only leads to more intense burnout. The solution wasn't to work faster, but to work smarter. They performed a ruthless audit of traditional corporate workflows. Unnecessary meetings were the first to go, replaced by asynchronous communication and clear, centralized documentation. They identified and automated repetitive administrative tasks, freeing up cognitive energy for deep creative work. Their philosophy shifted from measuring inputs like hours worked to measuring outcomes, the actual value delivered to clients. This constraint of a 32-hour week acted as a powerful forcing function, compelling a discipline and focus that the 5-day week with its illusion of endless time rarely encourages. This radical model quickly became their most powerful recruitment tool. In a competitive talent market, Aura stood out. Gen Z and Millennial talent, disillusioned with legacy corporations, weren't just looking for a paycheck. They were looking for alignment. They wanted flexibility, purpose, and a culture that actively supported their well-being, and they expected it. A 4-day work week was the most powerful and credible signal that Aura offered all 3. It was a competitive advantage that money couldn't buy, attracting top-tier engineers, designers, and strategists who were eager to do their best work in an environment built on respect. They weren't just offering a job, they were offering a different way of life. Finally, they had to ensure the model was financially sustainable. They committed to the 180-100 model, 100% of a market rate salary for 80% of the hours in exchange for 100% of the productivity. While this seemed like a cost increase on paper, the model created its powerful efficiencies. With the office closed 1 extra day a week, overhead costs for utilities were lower. More importantly, the high productivity and near-zero employee turnover dramatically reduced the immense hidden costs associated with recruitment, hiring, and training new staff, costs that bleed profits from less healthy organizations. They proved that investing in employee well-being wasn't an expense. It was a sound financial strategy that paid dividends in loyalty, focus, and innovation. 3. The final verdict: success, sustainability, and the future. 1 year after its launch, Aura was not just surviving, it was thriving. The question that hung in the air at the beginning, could a 4-day work week work, had been answered with a resounding yes. The data told a story that was even more compelling than their initial vision. It mirrored the results of major international pilot programs that have been studying this new frontier of work. In their first year, employee turnover at Aura was virtually non-existent, a stark contrast to the tech industry's high churn rates. This reflected findings from a landmark UK trial where participating companies saw staff turnover drop by an average of 57%. The financial savings from not having to constantly recruit and onboard new talent were reinvested directly into the company and its people. But the most profound change was in the team's well-being. Anonymous internal surveys showed a dramatic decrease in stress and a significant increase in work-life balance. Self-reported symptoms of burnout, the very poison that had sparked Aura's creation, fell by over 70%, a figure that aligns perfectly with the results of the largest global studies on the 4-day workweek. Employees reported having more time for family, hobbies, and rest, returning to work on Monday not with dread, but with renewed energy and focus. And what about the bottom line? This is where the experiment became a revolution. Client satisfaction scores were consistently higher than industry benchmarks, and project delivery times were faster. Revenue had not only remained stable, it had grown by 20% in their first year, outperforming many of their 5-day-a-week competitors. They were living proof of what Microsoft Japan discovered in their trial. A shorter work week could lead to a 40% boost in productivity. They proved that productivity and well-being are not opposing forces. They are two sides of the same coin. Looking back, the founders realized their rebellion against burnout had created more than just a successful company. It had created a blueprint, a tangible, evidence-backed model showing that the values Gen Z champions, flexibility, mental health, purpose, and balance, are not naive ideals. They are the very foundation of a more resilient, more innovative, and ultimately more profitable way of doing business. Their story proves that you don't have to choose between your people and your profits. By prioritizing their people, the profits followed. Aura wasn't an escape from the old world of work. It was the beginning of a new one. Conclusion. The story of Aura is more than just the journey of one startup. It's a testament to a generational shift. It proves that the demand for a healthier, more humane way of working is not a fleeting trend, but the future. Gen Z's values are not a liability in the modern economy. They are a strategic advantage, capable of building companies that are not only more enjoyable to work for, but more successful and sustainable in the long run. A better way of working is not a dream. It is a choice. It's a choice to reject the burnout-fueled myths of hustle culture and to instead build on a foundation of trust, respect, and balance. It's a choice available to founders, to leaders, and to every single person who refuses to accept that work has to be a source of pain. What does your dream company look like? What is the one rule it would be built on? Share your vision in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the blueprints of our changing world, make sure you're subscribed to GenShift.